Americans, what is the rest of the world not ready to hear? Most of you guys are getting pretty fat too. Europe has a racism problem as well. I moved from America to Europe and y'all jump through so many hoops to pretend that America is the only place with racism despite how blaringly blatant it is in Europe. Most of Europe and Asia is far, far more racist than most of the US. California is the fifth largest economy in the world. The dumbest Americans often speak the loudest. You'd rather have us as the world police than China. Most Americans, be they liberal or conservative, are not nearly as hateful as you might assume from reading Reddit posts or watching American news programs. Americans are not the only annoying tourists in the world. We can be bad, sure, but I have met plenty of assholes from all sorts of countries visiting. Sometimes reading through Reddit you get the sense that the only people in the world with bad travel manners are Americans. McDonald's is not the only building in America. KFC will have a new seasoning on the chicken sandwiches. America isn't the only country with problems. The only reason Florida Man exists is because of Florida's laws about the accessibility of crime documentation, which makes it a goldmine for tabloid journalism. We aren't uncultured because we don't travel, it's just that our states are the size of your countries. I can drive 8 hours in my state, and still be in my state. And then you have Texas. We are not a monolith. The difference in culture between states, even counties or towns, can be massive. Making a generalized statement about Americans is really just disingenuous. Many of y'all are just as fucked up, we're just louder. Not all Americans have money. Edit. Most don't. America is more welcoming than most other countries. For example, I've been living in Korea for almost 3 years. I could speak the language perfectly, interact with the community, learn the customs and traditions, and yet I still wouldn't be considered Korean, or even be looked at as a Korean citizen. I wouldn't belong, because I don't look Korean. But in the US, you can be from pretty much anywhere and be accepted as an American. You might look African, Asian, European, but you would be considered American. And you would belong. And it's awesome. The US is one of the most welcoming places in the world. We have a buttload of fresh water. When the climate crisis is in full impact, we will still have usable water in the country. We don't think about you. Despite there being an obesity epidemic, there are many children who are hungry. Unfortunately, the foster care system is a worse outcome sometimes. We have many hungry children. MASH is better without the laugh track. After watching Reddit collectively shit on the US for like a decade, this thread is cathartic. The FitnessGram Pacer test is a multi-stage aerobic capacity test that progressively gets more difficult as it continues. The 20-meter pacer test will begin in 30 seconds. Line up at the start. The running speed starts slowly, but gets faster each minute after you hear this signal. Beep. A single lap should be completed each time you hear this sound. Ding. Remember to run in a straight line, and run as long as possible. The second time you fail to complete a lap before the sound, your test is over. The test will begin on the word start. On your mark, get ready, start. If we stopped interfering in foreign affairs and pulled all our tax dollars away from foreign funding, many countries would fall. There's an awful lot of people who describe Americans as dumb or uncultured, and seem to be completely unaware of the sheer quantity of American tech and cultural exports they consume on a daily basis. What they don't seem to get is that American culture has become so dominant and ubiquitous, that it's just assumed to be the standard. It's especially amusing when these criticisms of Americans as dumb are written in the comment sections of websites founded and based in the US like Reddit or YouTube. Most of us are just normal folks, trying to get by. It's just 10% at each end of the political spectrum that are dingbats, but they get all the media coverage and give the rest of us a bad name. I'm not American but was raised there for most of my life. It's honestly one of the best places to live, it's clean and has so many different places to visit, perfect weather and beautiful nature. The school system wasn't bad either. I learned more stuff there than my home country, which has great education as well. I don't understand why other people try to convince themselves that the US is bad. Sure, I didn't live in a very big city, but I still visited a lot and they were fine as well. The only thing that isn't good is the healthcare system, but if you have insurance you'll be fine. Children are not your retirement fund. More Americans would travel if they could. There is criticism of Americans not being curious of other cultures. Some of that is valid, but travel isn't easily within people's means in the US. With no mandated vacation time and crippling low wages, having the time and money to travel to other countries isn't realistic for most Americans. We really don't want to go to war with Russia or China over your asses. We aren't the only country with a racist history. If it's not as dominant in world politics, then it's Russia and or China. And as shitty as America can be, our people and our government have a lot more respect for individual liberties than either of those countries' governments. We have more cities than New York, LA, and Miami. It's not just these three places and the rest is flyover country. Also, our country is huge. The bigger states, like mine, PA, you can drive for 6 hours in one direction and still be in the same state. I remember my family had to tell an English couple that was going to be in Erie for a week or two that we wouldn't be able to meet them for tea since we're on the opposite side of the state. That goes for flights, too. You won't be able to visit New York, LA, and Miami all in 1 or 2 weeks. Henry Winkler gets even cooler after Happy Days. Everyone likes to harp on our past of slavery, but we didn't invent, nor were we the biggest ones to do it. If we cast a light upon other countries' past, they would look bad also. Humans in general are incredibly shitty throughout time. The use of the metric system is way more prevalent than you think. Most people in the US do not have guns. The reason for there are 400 million guns in the US, is because guns are counted when they are sold, but they are not counted when they are destroyed, broken or disposed of, legally or illegally. So when you have a number that only goes up, guess what? It gets really big. It's also possible guns are double counted when one owner sells a gun to another person. Also, most gun owners own more than one gun, so you can't just divide the number of guns by the number of people because you have that one guy with 20 guns. So, when you come to visit, relax. There aren't cowboys and gangbangers on every street corner. The US never intended to become the world's police, and only did so because the rest of the world couldn't keep its shit together for more than 25 years before plunging itself into another world war. The only reason a large majority of Europe exists is because US military bases in Europe were the only deterrent to keep the Soviet Union from ROFL stomping their way to the Atlantic. When your cards are down, you'll always call Papa America. Y'all need to spend more money on your military and stop calling us. Many Americans don't have passports because the US is so big and diverse that you don't have to leave the country. Edit. I meant geographically diverse, with mountains, deserts, skiing, nice beaches, major cities, etc. Obviously, for real cultural diversity, you'd need to leave the states, although there is the argument for regional diversity across the US. America isn't actually that bad, it's just the news. 27 US states are actually farther north than the southernmost point of Canada. Keep Ohio's name out of your fucking mouth. A lot of us find it annoying to hear countries older than us who don't have their shit all the way figured out telling us how we should do things. We won't stop until the rest of you are as fat as us. People immigrate here for a reason. For as much as you criticize us, you are dependent on our military to be the police of the world so that you can enjoy relative peace. America runs on Duncan. We're not all fat. The US is probably not even top 10 or 20 for racism.